You have already obeyed 12 commands today, and you didn't notice a single one. The alarm told you when to wake up. You obeyed. The app told you what to feel outraged about. You obeyed. Your boss sent a message at 11 p.m. last night. You felt your chest tighten, and you obeyed. You didn't think of any of these as commands. That's exactly the problem. In 1961, a psychologist at Yale University ran an experiment so disturbing that when he published the results, other scientists accused him of making it up. He didn't test criminals. He didn't test soldiers. He walked up to ordinary people on the street, teachers, accountants, factory workers, fathers, and within 20 minutes, got 65% of them to do something they believed was killing another human being. Not through force, not through threats, through 4 sentences. That's all it took. And here's the part that should terrify you. Those 4 sentences, you hear versions of them every single day. From your boss, from your phone, from the news, from the people you trust most. This video is about what those sentences are, why they work on almost everyone, and the one thing Milgram discovered that can stop them cold. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you are going to see your own life very differently. It's 1961, New Haven, Connecticut. The world is still processing the Nuremberg trials. 17 years earlier, Nazi officers sat in a courtroom and said the same 4 words over and over. I was just following orders, and the world asked a question it couldn't answer. Were these people monsters, or were they ordinary? A young psychologist named Stanley Milgram decided to find out. He placed an ad in the local newspaper. Simple, innocent looking. Volunteers needed for a study on learning and memory. Compensation, $4.50. Location, Yale University. People showed up. Accountants, salesmen, factory workers, a high school teacher named Fred, a hardware store owner named Jack. Normal people, walking into what they thought was a science experiment. They were greeted by a man in a gray lab coat, serious, professional, holding a clipboard. He explained the study. They would be testing whether punishment helps people learn faster. Simple enough. Then came the draw. 2 slips of paper were folded and placed in a hat. One said, teacher. One said, learner. Each volunteer reached in and pulled out, teacher, every single time. Because both slips said teacher, the draw was rigged. The other person in the room, a friendly, mild-mannered man named Wallace, was not a real volunteer at all. He was an actor, a plant, part of the experiment from the very beginning. Wallace was led into a separate room. He sat down in a chair. Electrodes were attached to his wrist. He mentioned, almost casually, that he had a slight heart condition. The experimenter noted it and moved on. The real volunteer, the teacher, was seated in front of a machine, and this is where it gets disturbing. It had 30 switches, arranged in a neat row from left to right, each one labeled with a voltage, 15 volts, 30, 45, all the way up to 450 volts. Below the switches, printed labels described the intensity: slight shock, moderate shock, strong shock, very strong shock, intense shock, extreme intensity shock. And at the very end, the last 2 switches, no words at all, just 3 letters, X, X, X. The experimenter gave the teacher a sample shock, 45 volts, just so they'd know it was real. It hurt. Then the experiment began. Wallace, in the other room, would attempt to memorize word pairs. Every time he got one wrong, the teacher would press a switch, starting at 15 volts, and with every wrong answer, moving 1 step higher. The teacher could hear Wallace through a speaker, but couldn't see him, and at first, everything was fine. 15 volts, 30, 45. Silence from the other room. Then, 75 volts. A grunt, brief, almost easy to dismiss. 120 volts. Hey, that's starting to really hurt in here. 150 volts. Let me out. I don't want to do this anymore. I told you, I have a heart condition. Let me out. And this is the moment. This is the moment the real experiment begins. Because the teacher, sitting alone at that machine, turned to the experimenter, and the experimenter looked back at them, completely calm, and said, "Please continue." That's it. No threats, no weapons, no punishment if they refused. Just, "Please continue." And if the teacher hesitated again, the experimenter had 4 scripted phrases, used in order. The experiment requires that you continue. It is absolutely essential that you continue. You have no other choice. You must go on. Most people continued. They pressed the switch, and then again, and again. 180 volts. Wallace screamed that he couldn't take it anymore. 270. An agonized cry, unlike anything comfortable to hear. 300. He pounded on the wall, then went silent. The experimenter told the teacher, "No response counts as a wrong answer. Keep going. Now, here's what you need to understand about the people pressing those switches. They were not okay." Milgram watched through a one-way mirror. He saw teachers trembling, sweating through their shirts, laughing nervously. Not because it was funny, but because their nervous systems were overwhelmed. One man had a full, uncontrollable seizure in his chair. They knew something was wrong. Every cell in their body was screaming at them to stop. But 65% of them pressed all the way to 450 volts. Why? Milgram called it the Agentic State. Here's how to think about it. Inside your brain, there's a kind of switch. When it's in autonomous mode, you are in charge. You act based on your own values, your own conscience, and you feel responsible for what you do. But when that switch flips, when you enter what Milgram called the Agentic State, something strange happens. You stop being the decision maker. You become an instrument, an extension of someone else's will. And the moment that happens, your sense of personal responsibility disappears. I'm just following orders. It's not my call. I'm just doing my job. You've heard these words before. Maybe you've said them yourself. And here's the terrifying part. You don't need someone to force you into that state. All it takes is a white lab coat, a title, a system that looks official, and your brain does the rest on its own. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you next is the part of this story nobody talks about, the part that happens to you every single day, and the people profiting from it are counting on you never making the connection. Let me tell you about a company. You've never heard their name. You've never seen their office. You probably couldn't pick their CEO out of a lineup. But this company, and hundreds like it, employs entire floors of psychologists, behavioral scientists, and data engineers, whose only job is to study what makes you hesitate before closing an app. What makes you scroll just one more time? What specific shade of red on a notification badge creates the most urgency in your brain? They run thousands of experiments per week. On you, without your knowledge, without your consent, testing which version of their product makes it hardest for you to stop. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's called A/B testing. It's taught in business schools. It's celebrated in Silicon Valley. And its entire purpose is to find the most effective way to flip your agentic switch and keep it there. Now let me make this personal. Think about the last time you went to check one notification and came up for air 40 minutes later. You didn't decide to spend 40 minutes there. No one held a gun to your head. But someone, somewhere, in a building you'll never visit, had run the exact experiment to make sure you stayed. They found the precise interval of reward and uncertainty that keeps the human brain in a loop it can't easily exit. They pressed your switch, and you didn't feel a thing. Or think about this. You're at work. There's a meeting. Something is wrong. Genuinely wrong. Maybe it's a decision that's going to hurt people. Maybe it's a policy everyone in the room privately thinks is unfair. Maybe someone is being treated badly and you can see it clearly. The room is quiet. Your manager is talking. And in your throat, the words form. The objection. The one true thing that needs to be said. And then you look around the room. Nobody else is moving. Everyone is nodding. The authority is present. The pressure is real. And the cost of speaking feels enormous. So you swallow it. You tell yourself, it's not my place. Someone else will say something. I'll bring it up later. Later never comes. That moment, that exact moment when you swallow the true thing, is the Milgram Experiment. You're sitting at the machine. The experimenter is in the room, and you press the switch. Not because anyone threatened you, but because the system was watching, and defiance felt impossible. Here's the one that cuts deepest, and I need you to really sit with this. Think about the last time someone was publicly destroyed online. Maybe it started with a video, a screenshot, a clip with no context. Someone said the wrong thing, or maybe they didn't even say it, but it was framed that way. And within hours, the machine was running. Hundreds of thousands of people sharing, commenting, piling on, and somewhere in there, maybe you engaged too. A like, a share, a comment that felt like justice in the moment. Who gave the order? Nobody. The platform did. The trending algorithm decided this person was today's target, promoted the content to millions of feeds, and let human psychology do the rest. The number in the corner, 800,000 impressions. That number is the authority, and we became the executioners. We pressed the switch, not because we are bad people, but because the system was designed, deliberately, precisely, by people with PhDs, to make us feel like not pressing, it would be the strange thing to do. And here's what makes this different from the original Milgram experiment. In 1961, you had to physically show up to a lab. You had to sit in a room. You could see the experimenter's face. The situation had an end. Today, the lab is open 24 hours a day. It lives in your pocket. It follows you into bed, into the bathroom, into moments that used to belong only to you. There is no debrief. Nobody tells you afterward what just happened. The experiment never ends. Milgram asked, how far will an ordinary person go under the instruction of authority? He thought the answer was disturbing in 1961. He had no idea what was coming. But here's what most people don't know about Milgram's experiment. He didn't just run one version. He ran 23 variations. And one of them, variation 17, changed everything. In variation 17, the setup was almost identical. Same room, same machine, same experimenter in the gray coat. But this time, there were 3 teachers, not one. 2 of them were actors, secretly part of the study. The experiment began. Voltages climbed. Wallace screamed. And at 150 volts, the first actor put down his papers. I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not going to continue. He stood up, moved to the side of the room. A beat of silence. Then the second actor did the same. I agree. This isn't right. I'm done. Now only the real participant was left. Sitting alone at the machine. The experimenter still there. Still saying, please continue. What happened? 90% of participants refused to go on. 90%. In the original experiment, alone, 65% went all the way to the end. With 2 people willing to stand up, 90% stopped. 2 ordinary people, not heroes, not activists, not anyone special, changed the moral landscape of that entire room just by being willing to say, I don't think this is right. That is the most important finding in the entire study. And it's the one nobody talks about. Obedience is not inevitable. It breaks the moment someone is willing to go first. So what does that mean for you? Milgram's research, and decades of psychology since, points to 3 things. Not feel-good advice. Actual cognitive tools. The first, name the authority for what it is. Not every authority is legitimate. There are 2 kinds. Earned authority, built on actual knowledge, real accountability, and reasoning you can examine and challenge. And manufactured authority, built on titles, follower counts, notification badges, and urgency that was engineered in a lab to bypass your judgment. Before you comply with anything, ask one question. If I stripped away the lab coat, the job title, the trending tab, the verified checkmark, would this instruction still make sense? If the answer is no, you've identified the machine, and you don't have to press the button. The second, slow it down. The agentic state activates fastest under pressure. Under the feeling that you must decide right now. That urgency is almost always manufactured. Give yourself 30 seconds, just 30, and ask, if the consequences of this decision landed entirely on me, would I still make it? That question hands the responsibility back to you. And the moment you feel responsible again, the agentic state collapses. The third, be the second person. You don't have to be the first to speak up. That takes extraordinary courage, and not everyone can do it in every moment. But you can be the second. When someone, in a meeting, in a comment thread, in a group chat, in your family, says the uncomfortable true thing, you can say 2 words. I agree. That's it. That's what Variation 17 required. 2 words, and 90% of the room comes back to themselves. After every session of the experiment, Milgram would sit down with the participant and tell them the truth. Wallace was an actor. No one was actually hurt. The electricity was never real. And Milgram noted something that disturbed him far more than the results themselves. Most participants didn't feel relieved. They felt ashamed. Not because they had hurt someone. They hadn't. But because in that room, under those conditions, they had met a version of themselves they did not recognize. A version that kept pressing the button. A version that was capable of cruelty. As long as someone with authority was watching. And here's what I want to leave you with. You are living inside a system that is, right now, today, this second, more sophisticated than anything Milgram could have imagined. It has more data on your psychology than you have on yourself. It knows which images make your pupils dilate, which headlines make your heart rate spike, which notification sound makes you reach for your phone before you've even consciously registered hearing it. And it uses all of that to keep your agentic switch flipped, to keep you pressing buttons and calling it your own choice. The participants in Milgram's study were debriefed. Someone sat down with them and explained what had just happened. Nobody is going to do that for you. There is no debrief at the end of your scroll session. No researcher who pulls you aside after you join that pylon and says, here is what your brain just did. Here is who pressed your switch. Here is what you actually agreed to. The experiment ends when you end it. So here is the only question that matters. Now that you know you have a switch, who do you want holding it?